The Penre Papers. A Journey Through the Multiverse. The Second Level of Learning. http://wespenre.com. Metaphysics Paper Number 2, Creation of Universes. By Penre, Friday, June 15, 2012. Revised, December 12, 2012 at 4:30 a.m. http://wespenre.com. Part 1. 1. The Great Architect of the Universe and the Purpose of Different Creator Gods. By now, the reader understands a little bit in what direction this is going. The Great Architect of the Universe, which Freemasonry equals to God, is not a masculine entity, but a feminine. Of course, the heads of secret societies like Freemasonry and others know very well that this is the case, but hide it from the members, because they need to have people conform to the patriarchal regime, the fathership rather than the mothership of the energies of existence. Exactly why certain beings from other star systems and higher dimensions are so determined to make us believe in a masculine existence will be evident enough as we go on, but we've been living in a dichotomy for hundreds of thousands of years. Incredibly enough, there are forces who want to overthrow the goddess from the throne of creation. This may sound very strange to some readers, but in time I will show how this can be, and is, possible and planned as we speak, and has been the goal of a certain star race for a long time, perhaps 1,000,000 years or more. This also indicates that the goddess, the great architect of the universe, can manifest as a being in a universe of her creation. She can and she does. More about that later. Once beings and star races have evolved past a certain point, they may become overseers of their own universe and will be responsible for what is created therein. They become what I call builders, where they start creating in a universe which the goddess has already given energies to and built the basic structure around. In the beginning, the builders and the goddess apparently create and seed life together with each other, but at one point, the builders take over. Then, once the builders are appointed to lead the development of their own universe, the goddess pretty much leaves it alone for the builders to do their own thing, because the more variety, the more the mother goddess can learn about herself. However, it allegedly happens every now and then that she manifests in the universes she structured and still helps with the seeding part. Because each universe has their own builders, each universe is unique, based on goals set by the mother goddess and the builders. Only the imagination of the builders then sets the limits to what they themselves, the founders, deaf and other creator gods, can create. The founders are the ones who initially seed plant, insect, and animal life on a young, non-inhabited planet, and eventually also more intelligent life, fit for interdimensional travel. Here below I will list the variety of creator gods and their purposes as I see it, albeit the cataloging is my own for the purpose of these papers. Other researcher may catalog them differently, still meaning the same thing. We also need to keep in mind that evolving in the way described below is a choice. A being or a star race may stop anywhere in their evolvement and not go any further if they so choose. They can instead expand on the level which they are at and not evolve to the next levels explained here. So, it's all by choice and is not being enforced on anybody. However, most star races evolve in this order. So, these 10 steps of development should be pretty accurate. 1. Players. Star races who have not yet evolved enough to become multidimensional or creator gods. You and I would be considered players, although there are scientists of the human race who would be considered genetic engineers, or semi-engineers, perhaps. 2. Genetic engineers, or creator gods with small letters if evolved enough within this category. A being, or a species, who have evolved on a planet to a degree that they are starting to experiment with genetic engineering, cloning, and genetic manipulation. At this stage, the species may still not have evolved enough to reach the stars or become multidimensional. This is an experimental stage. Humankind, or more accurately, our scientists, is in this stage of development, where they are playing around with genetics. 3. The founders, creator gods with capital letters, also called Kadatu, are two names for the same beings, but I will mostly call the founders. The founders/Katata were initially, in the beginning of the universe, beings created by the builders to help them seed the universe with basic life forms, such as plant and animal life. They always leave their signature in what they create. A butterfly may have a physical outlook similar to the founder who created it, and a praying mantis may be a small version of the founder who created this particular insect. Now, when the universe we live in is older, the original founders have evolved further and new founders are assigned constantly by the goddess and the builders, as intelligent beings created by Katata have evolved to a point where they can become founders, in order to assist towards the common goal set by the goddess and the original builders. The Katatas/founders are also the ones who choose which species is going to evolve on a certain planet to such a level that they can reach the stars and become multidimensional in nature and learn and understand the multiverse they live in, so that they themselves can become creator gods, and eventually founders and builders. Their urge to reach the stars will be embedded in the DNA of this young species. This is why animals don't have this urge, they were never designed to. Sometimes, there is more than one species on the same planet, designed to become multi-D and evolve to higher levels. 4. Stars. Becoming a star is the next level of evolvement. A star is a sentient, very evolved being, or more often a composite of beings, who create their own solar system by giving birth to planets and moons, who become their children, whom they will be responsible for. Stars are also like portals, because they are directly connected with each other, some more directly than others. And they are in communication with each other and often evolve together, as they interact. Creator gods on this level and above are always feminine in nature. A being automatically turns feminine in this stage of development. This is why we call the sun and the earth she, without really knowing why, it just feels natural. In fact, it is a heritage from ancient times, when the early, higher evolved humans knew these secrets and called beings by their appropriate gender. 5. Planets. One would think that a planet is lower on the scale of evolvement than stars, but in reality they evolve together with their star, or stars, if it is a multiple star system, in unison. Planets are intelligent beings, just like the stars, suns, and are hosts to different life forms, seeded through panspermia by the founders. The life forms developing on a certain planet become the children of that planet, and the life forms and the planet herself are hopefully working together to evolve to a higher level, as they are closely connected to each other. This is why it's so important for us humans to stay grounded in nature to be able to evolve. 6. Nebulae. A nebula is a cosmic cloud, and the birth center of stars. So when a star has accomplished its goals, she evolves into a nebula, not necessarily at the same location as she had lived her incarnation as a star, however, and gives birth to new stars of which she becomes responsible. These stars will be like sisters to each other and will be inhabited by founders and Katata who have evolved to a stage where they are ready to become a newborn star in that cluster, created by the nebula. 7. Galaxies. The next step would be to inhabit a whole newly formed galaxy with your consciousness. You are now responsible for the evolvement of that same galaxy, with all the nebulae, stars, planets, founders, Katata, creator gods, and players. 8. The builders are evolved beings who are ready to operate in a universe which the goddess may have recently created. The builders are responsible to create initial life and assign their own creator gods, who can help them seed the newborn universe and help it work on accomplishing the goals that are set up for this particular universe and which is embedded in the DNA of all races. If the goals are not met, which sometimes happens, because beings have free will in many universes, the universe fails and may die prematurely. This is just a part of the game, and a new, revised and improved attempt will be made through the creation of a new universe, or the goal will be considered not achievable and abandoned. LPGC, in their new report, Idiomaterial Physics, a Life Physics of a Bicausal Universe/Unum, bring up the subject of previous universes as well. There was a Big Bang around 13.7 billion years ago where the universe began from one single point and has been expanding ever since. They then point out that the standard model of science does not explain what happened before that. However, the authors say, there are traces of a previous universe existing in the current universe. This has been suggested by researchers from Penn State University, they say. They have come to the conclusion that there was a previous, contracting universe before this one, with a similar space/time geometry as our expanding universe. The previous universe collapsed and then bounced as the Big Bang. These researchers could show that in place of a classical Big Bang there is in fact a quantum bounce. They claim that the Big Bang bounce scenario is robust. LPGC comments that it's quite similar to rebooting a computer set to specific performance parameter already containing an operating system set to interact and interface with its subsystems and subtotalities. Both nocive using ends and present-day physical evidence suggest it has not happened just once, but several times. 9. Overseers. Beings who have evolved to such high level that they are assigned their own universe, or a pond of universes, to oversee and be responsible for, will be further explained later in this paper. They now, together with overseers of other universes, who may step down from their positions, become the builders, whom by the goddess are told, go out and create. And the builders, to some extent in conjunction with the goddess, seed the first life in the young universe. The builders become her senior helpers. 10. Mother Goddess, all that is, the creator of all universes, the void or the Khaa. So, universes are created, with galaxies, nebulae, stars, and planets. All this is intelligent energy which is aware on a very high level, much more so than you and I in our current stage of evolvement. When souls advance to certain levels they become planets, stars, nebulae, and galaxies. For example, when you're a star/sun and have created your own solar system, other creator gods, such as the founders, arrive and ask for permission to create on your planets, and thus life is expanding. To understand this vast concept of how a being can create a whole universe, we have to use allegories and metaphors. The best way to explain it is with the expression, as above, so below. If something happens in our world, we can be almost certain it also happens on a grander scale, and on a smaller scale, too. You can picture a film producer sitting in a couch, watching a movie he created on the big screen. There are characters in the movie who are doing all sorts of things and he watches how the actors perform. Now, picture the goddess sitting in the middle of the universe, which she herself created, watching how we, and everybody else in this universe perform, but perhaps not in 3D but from all dimensions. Just like the film producer, the goddess watches carefully to see what goes per the plan and what goes wrong. She is not judgmental, it's not like she is just destroying her creation left and right if she doesn't like what she sees, it's more like she wants the players to correct themselves, still within the guidelines of free will. She is a very compassionate being and doesn't like suffering, but knows that it's always up to the builders, all the way down to the player, to decide in which directions they want to go, or the purpose of creation gets lost. If free will is not allowed, the outcome is predictable, and this is of course very clear to the goddess. Predictability is not what she wants, because that would destroy the purpose with the whole creation and there would be nothing of much value to learn for her or anybody else, except that everything is predictable. More or less predestined universes, I'm assuming, have existed. What about the outcome? There is always a goal coming with the creation of a universe, and the goddess comes up with the idea of a goal, discusses it with the overseer and the builders, whom she then assigned to help her form a universe as we know it, and these builders make the universe teem with life in all shapes and forms. All these created intelligences then set the stage and start to create their own realities. So there are endless probabilities for the outcome of a universe, it mostly depends on the helpers and the players, the actors in the game, such as you and I. As humans, our curiosity leads us to ask questions that may be irrelevant on a grander scale, but feel important for us. One of these questions may be, how do these builders who create universes look like? Are they just pure energy? This is a very difficult question to answer, because with our limited 5 senses, it's hard to grasp these big concepts. We know there are microcosms and macrocosms, and the saying, as above, so below is a very appropriate way to describe it. A virus or a bacteria can't even start imagining how a human would look like with their limited consciousness, because in comparison with them, if they would have consciousness to be self-aware, they may see themselves as living in a macrocosm and we would be some super macrocosm to them. Seen from that perspective, the goddess and the overseers of universes would be as super macrocosms to us, but at the same time they would be the microcosm. They would most certainly be both. They are composite fires on a microcosmic level, but can show themselves off on a macrocosmic level as giants too, if they like. A hint of what we're talking about may be found in Barbara Marciniak's book, Family of Light. The builders of universes are not vague, nebulous beings, they are composite intelligences, unified in their understanding of the universal energies. As we shall see when we get into a later section of this paper, a soul on a higher level than 3D, who has learned how to do it, can take on any shape and form it wants, so in a way, how an ET looks like becomes on some level nebulous, but it seems like founders who seed planets with life look at themselves in some kind of physical manner. The Pleiadians, themselves a composite intelligence, tell us that many of the original founders who visited Earth when she was in her infancy looked like a combination of humans and animals, like I hinted at above. They all put their imprints on the fauna on Earth. Each creator god has their animal represented as their imprint. Also, people look like animals and thus have different amount of DNA from different creator gods and took on their image. We are created in the image, of the gods. These animals keep in touch with their creator gods to see what's going on here on Earth while they are elsewhere. This is particularly interesting in the perspective of what I presented in Level I and in the myth of Supreme David Rockefeller, where I said I had noticed in people that they sometimes look like a humanized form of particular animals. This is in no way to ridicule people, because it can be very aesthetic and attractive. Some people have the imprint of looking like birds, other like horses, buffaloes, hippos, bears, wolves, dogs, cats, etc. Other people just look human, with no visible animal imprint. So, when you mingle in a crowd next time, or even when you go to work, just stand back and observe and you will eventually see what I mean. You may even want to look yourself in the mirror and see if you have an imprint yourself. If you do, congratulations! There is a hint how your founder may have looked like. And now I'm talking about our DNA imprints from many millions of years ago, not the imprint of the Syrian lords, who came to Earth later, hijacked the planet and started messing with our DNA. The Pleiadians further tell us that the gods were even putting out chronometers here on Earth, and presumably on other planets too, to measure the stage of consciousness and how it changes. 2. A new way of looking at the structure of the omniverse from an interdimensional perspective. Science is giving us a model of the universe, and rogue scientists are giving us a slightly different one. I think they are both correct in their own sense, but not complete. Lately, I have looked into this subject to perhaps get a better perspective of it, because I have come to understand that we live in a holographic version of a holographic universe, in other words, a hologram within a hologram, and there may be many more levels of holograms as well. If so, the universe we depict when we look up in the night sky or study star maps, how correct are they? Are they just a hologram and a distorted picture of the known universe, as LPGC calls it? I think it is to a large degree. So I studied other ways of looking at the universe, the multiverse, and the omniverse, which includes all currently existing universes and the goddess universe as well. Here follows an analogy of how many star beings apparently look upon the universe from a multidimensional perspective, and it also includes a look at things from an omnidimensional viewpoint. I have been comparing notes from many different sources here, but I come back to the following model, which makes sense to me if presented in such a simple fashion that it becomes comprehensible for the human nervous system. Imagine the goddess dropping a pebble into the pond and it creates ripples. Each ripple is a line, or a thread, very much like a sound wave. The universe is built from sound/music. Then think of galaxies as water lilies with lotuses spreading out all over the pond. Then think of these ripples becoming webs, almost like spider webs, and the goddess is the spider in the middle, spinning the webs. These webs eventually become round, like planets, and each ripple/web is equivalent to a universe, and each living universe has an overseer. The Pleiadians are one of the sources who described the universe as a web in an energy exercise from one of Barbara Marciniak's books, Earth Pleiadian Keys to the Living Library. Imagine a fine spider-like web that makes up your cosmos. As you pull energy through that web, it begins to buzz and sing and inform all parts of itself. Barbara Hand-Klau's Pleiadians are on the same page and go on to further explain, the original pathways out of the vortexes were spun out by Spider Grandmother in the beginning of time and then woven together. The vortexes were generated exactly where the pathways cross, and out of these crossings and lines, species were created. The storytellers told the stories of Spider Grandmother, and animals and plants were formed. We Pleiadians call this the web of life. Now the web has become the net that blocks travel by stellar intelligences in the pathways. The web has tightened and has almost closed due to the lies the Anunnaki layered over the original stories, especially since 0. This last part may seem cryptic to the reader at this point, but we will come back to that, and we are going to find that the Pleiadians here are very accurate. Hand-Klau's Pleiadians continue. As the Anunnaki suck you to get Gaia's energy and plot to keep you under their thumbs, they twist the records of activations by great beings, thus keeping you away from Earth vortexes as much as possible. They are heavily invested in keeping you from discovering the real connective powers of sacred places as well as the active powers of gold, uranium, crystals, and plants. Such powers can activate the Earth and awaken your deep memories, triggering connections with galactic intelligence. Power places have often been revealed to you by the unexpected appearance of illuminated beings. Often temples are built where great beings were seen, and many of you can genuinely feel this energy of place. The Anunnaki believe they own you. They've diverted you away from these power places, preventing the great beings from reaching you. Lately, even they are bored with their own limited games, and they are impulsed to seek these great beings. The dynamic is shifting fast because they know these power vortexes are their only access to these powers. Now, to expand on the pond allegory, we said that in a pond there are webs which are becoming round, like planets, and every round web becomes a universe. Each pond consists of 12 universes. Then, there are other ponds, almost infinite in numbers, which are all consisting of 12 universes each. The goddess has placed a part of herself in the middle of each universe in any given pond. Before life can develop on any planet, it has to come from somewhere. We know from our history books and geology lessons that there was a lot of thunder and lightning in the beginning of Earth's history and eventually our atmosphere was formed. The rains started and they didn't stop until eons later and filled our world with water which became the oceans. In our term, abnormal weather conditions continued on the planet for a very long time. Also, asteroids kept bombarding the planet from north to south, from east to west, and vice versa. These asteroids, meteors, and meteoroids came of course from outer space and landed on our world and they still do, albeit not in the quantity they used to. However, this is very important to keep in mind, as we shall see now. First of all, lightning contains a high level of energy, life energy. Scientists of today understand that this may have something to do with creating life, which is very true. Nowadays, they are also starting to grasp the idea of panspermia, which means that life on Earth may have started elsewhere, namely in outer space. One of the many versions of panspermia is called directed panspermia. This means that someone from outer space seeded asteroids etc. with life and literally directed these space rocks intentionally to hit our planet so that life could start developing. In my mind, based on my own research, there is no doubt whatsoever that directed panspermia is a reality and the life-bringing viruses and bacteria were directed mainly by the so-called founders. These asteroids, meteors, and meteoroids also carried the DNA, the basic building blocks, when they fell into the oceans and on land. Thus, primitive life forms started developing. More heavenly bodies were directed our way as time went by and more developed life forms began to show up on Earth. The theory that life started in the oceans and fish evolved to a stage where they grew legs and became land beings is not necessarily correct. More likely, rocks from space which hit land contained DNA which would, when hit the ground, start developing plants and land animals etc. on land as well as it had done, eons earlier, in the oceans. This is how life started on Earth, and this is how life starts on any planet in the universe. It doesn't start by itself in a random fashion, it is being seeded by extraterrestrial, highly evolved beings. And now think about this, meteors and other rocks from space are still landing on our planet. Are they carrying DNA which will develop into totally new species that will start showing up in the future? If we look back in time, new types of plants and new species of animals have developed on our planet in the past and still are. It's an interesting thought. When a new intelligent race is created, many founders contribute to its creation. Then this race evolves until it reaches a state of creator godship, after have learned as much as it possibly can about themselves and the universe they live in. While doing this, each individual contributes to the overall expansion of consciousness in that universe and other universes, too, as they are all connected in the web, and ultimately, the goddess is learning more about herself. Normally, a species evolves together and is reaching the state of creator godship as a group, in unison, although there are exceptions from the rule. Planet Earth is one of these exceptions as we shall see later on. Here on Earth we are trapped in a veil of amnesia, so it's extremely hard to evolve on a planet such as ours. But even here on Earth, although it's done more on an individual basis at the moment, each individual who evolves and raises his/her consciousness affects others to do the same, and it still becomes a group thing and eventually affects the whole human soul group in one way or the other. We will discuss our specific condition as a human soul group in later papers, but for now we only need to know that our conditions are not a natural process in the development of a species. After have passed a stage in their development when they have become multidimensional, are able to space travel, and understand the science of genetic engineering, a species normally becomes life designers or founders, which means they go out in the universe and seed new life on young planets. They become genetic engineers who can create life by using DNA of their own life form and, if they like, mix it with other races, to create something new to develop on the new world. But first, if they are ethical and follow the laws of non-interference, they ask for permission from the Creator God who has already become the star/sun of that solar system in which the founders and the Kadita want to create. The star, as a Creator God, first created the planets of its own solar system. These planets are meant to be seeded with life by younger creator gods who have still not evolved to become stars. The RA Collective in the RA material http://laophone.info tell us that you become a sun/star when you reach what they term the 8th density. After have become stars and planets, we normally do so as a species, or a collective of founders who have evolved, as described in the RA material. By being stars, we are now the overhead owners of the real estate we call a solar system, where a planet is the living host of the species dwelling on it. The star, as the mother of its solar system, is a nurturer of all life which is evolving in her system, just like a human mother would nurture her children. A planet is doing the same thing with the life she hosts so that it can develop under the best imaginable conditions available to her. This is an example of unconditional love, because no matter what the life that's evolving in the solar system is doing, Mother Sun and Mother Earth continue sending them both light and unconditional love, none of them is judgmental. Then it is up to the species themselves to take advantage of this incredible nurturing. This can be compared to human children when they grow up, hopefully giving back to their parents what the parents gave them, and are passing the best of it on to their children. In this manner, a species will give back to the host what they are using of her resources so balance can be maintained. If a species can learn this, they will be good creator gods in the future, because they know how to nurture and love. Hence, their own creations when they become founders will receive the love and light they need to evolve peacefully. It's often when imbalanced founders go out and create that their children, their creations, become imbalanced as well. We know how this goes from watching our own human parenting. It's nothing different on a higher level of consciousness. We can be aware and conscious on a level high enough to become creator gods, but if we are not addressing our own imbalances before that, we will not be good creator gods/parents. Normally, the founders who seed the planet will usually be called the overseers of their creations, as they are helping the newborn species with their baby steps towards adolescence and adulthood, when needed. They follow their development on a distance without their creation being aware of it, or they sometimes give their creation the tools they need to evolve, and then leave them on their own, only checking back on occasion. Here on Earth, in ancient times, and still today within native tribes and other evolved people, we could see the tribes thanking the earth and the sun for what they were receiving from them. They had a much better understanding of whom they were in relation to the planet they lived on and the heavenly bodies. If there is too much imbalance, like on Earth, currently, it affects the planet, the sun, the whole solar system, and in the worst case scenario, other parts of the universe. Planets and stars, as we now understand, are sentient beings, and they are affected by imbalance, just like you and I, and react to it by becoming sick and do abnormal things. We see that a lot in our own solar system today. Planets, no different from ourselves, are electromagnetic beings, and they influence us. The sun is doing everything she can to help us evolve, and although we need to do the work ourselves, the sun, which can be seen as a common oversoul for our species, helps us by feeding us encoded light within the electromagnetic spectra, especially powerful in the gamma spectrum and above. Yes, there is an above. Examples of this are the solar flares and the 11-year sunspot cycles. They both carry packages of information which trigger parts of our DNA that is dormant, and we start seeing things from a different, slightly more evolved perspective, although each individual on the planet decodes this light-encoded information differently, which is the whole purpose. After all, we are created as individuals. So, it's not the sun going crazy, erupting and sending out flares that may be harmful for us, it's quite the opposite. It's necessary for the evolution of a species and something all suns do to help life evolve on their planets. The Pleiadians say there is intelligent life on all planets in our solar system, in one form or the other. This doesn't mean that we can take a space shuttle and go to Jupiter and find little green men there, but if the Pleiadians are correct, life in other dimensions exist on these planets. This is why it's so ludicrous when SETI and others are sending out radio signals into space, hoping to find life. Life is all around us and has been for millions of years, perhaps billions. Beings who would potentially pick up these radio signals would totally ignore them. They already know about Earth, and if they wanted to reply, they would already have done so. Even if there is life on all planets in our solar system, does this mean there is life on all planets in the universe? My research has led me to believe that the answer is no. Our system is still relatively young, so it's teeming with life, but there are older systems out there where planets have fulfilled their duty of hosting a species, and the species have left. In these cases, the goddess and the builders let these planets have a resting period before they are potentially allowing them to be seeded again. Interestingly enough, the Pleiadians tell us that civilizations in themselves are seeded, and after a specific civilization either fails or moves on, there is a lag before the next installment, pretty much like there is a lag between sequels when you are making a movie with a part 1, 2, and 3. They suggest that on our planet, civilizations are layered one on top of the other, and they are all connected. Then they say something very interesting. In the time of the awakening, which is now, the old cultures, who are no longer living on Earth, and whom we have no contact with in present time, will come alive again and operate simultaneously, together with us, because their blueprints will be recalled and magnetized into this opening multidimensional plane. This has to do with timeline merging, something I explained in Level I. If everything goes well, the star and its solar system live its cycle, turns into a supernova, then a white dwarf and eventually a black hole. In that process, the star as a collective of creator gods is normally ready to become a nebula which creates its own hosts, clusters of stars to be inhabited by consciousness. The consciousness which inhabits the shell, which is the visible star itself, is of course that of founder collectives who are prepared to evolve to their next phase of development, to become a star. These stars, inhabited by Katatus/founder consciousness, are the children of the nebula. Normally, when the stars in the star cluster, which the nebula created, have accomplished their goals, or are well into the process, the nebula evolves into a galactic consciousness, where all nebulae, stars, planets, creator gods, players, animals, and plants will be her children. The centers of the galaxies, if the reader recalls, are the wombs of the mother, where the goddess leaves her imprints in each universe that contains galaxies. The creator god, who evolved from a nebula to a galaxy, will surround the galaxy, just like a soul/information cloud. Fire is thought of as surrounding our body. However, in the middle of each galaxy there is a giant black hole, signified as the womb of the mother goddess, where her presence is flooding into the galaxy and fires every corner of it, and every single cell in it. The nebula who is evolving is more of an overseer of the progress of the entire galaxy. When a galaxy has reached its goal, it will slowly integrate with the goddess universe, the 96%, again. Although the fire of the goddess can never die or stop burning from a 4% universe perspective, this is still what it looks like it's doing. However, what is actually happening is that instead of suns in a whole galaxy burning out and its light fading, it evolves into becoming dark matter and dark energy. In other words, it becomes pure spirit and everything therein merges with the goddess. It would be logical to think that the creator god who was overseeing this particular galaxy now may turn into a dark cosmic cloud and then create clusters of galaxies which she oversees. However, this is most unlikely, because my research has made me conclude that the galaxies are created by the mother goddess herself, so her imprint can be found in everything there is in each universe as well as in each galaxy and all the way down to the smallest of particles. So the clusters of galaxies scientists have seen being formed are solely the creation of goddess herself, in a distant past. It is my understanding that no more galaxies are created at this time, because of the imbalance in our universe as a whole. Not until the great misuse of energy is resolved will new galaxies be created. The ones the scientists have discovered were created billions and billions of years ago, as they are looking back in time when they explore phenomena at a far distance. The more light years away, the further back in time they look. It's much more likely that the being who oversaw a galaxy and now is ready to evolve is assigned its own ripple or web, which corresponds to an entire universe. This former galactic consciousness, now transformed into something else, will be the overseer of its own universe, while the goddess is the overseer of them all. As we can see from our discussion so far, there is no such thing as Darwinism and an evolution of species through natural selection and random creation. Everything on a planet is seeded by creator gods outside of the planet, by what we here would call highly developed extraterrestrials. Each species then evolves in its own pace over time. And we also see that there is a god, or in fact a goddess, who oversees all creation. 3. The founders, life designers of the multiverse. The Pleiadians call them the game masters, other names for them are the life designers, the founders, the Katatu, the original planners and many, many more. As we already discussed, I have chosen, and stuck to, certain terms for certain types of creator gods to make it less confusing. In Sumerian language, and if we trace it back even further, Aryan language, they are called the Katatu, a word we decomposed in the previous paper, and which is used frequently in Anton Park's trilogy, The Chronicles of the Gurkha. I will mostly call them founders, however, because this is a word more commonly used in these modern times. I am aware of that some call them the Elohim as well, equivalent to Sitchins and Anunnaki, or Syrians, which is who they really are, and Elohim is the term designated to them in the Bible as well. However, I want to make sure the reader understands that the Elohim are only one race of founders, and not exchangeable with the term founder or Katatu itself. Therefore, I am very reluctant to using the term Elohim. The Pleiadians, in Marciniak's book, Earth Pleiadian Keys to the Living Library, are in accordance with LPGC when speaking about onto energetics, that the founders are formless, soul-like, but can overlay and infuse themselves in many shapes and forms, and they are boundless shape-shifters, moving beyond sound and geometry, as we shall see later on. Shape-shifting is as common in the multiverse as eating is for us, not a big deal. We humans can do it easily when we understand how to. The founders first create in their minds the entire blueprint for the entire evolution of a targeted planet, and then seeding starts by directing meteors and other heavenly bodies containing seeds of life in form of bacteria and viruses etc. towards the planet, and the desired evolution will begin, all in simple terms. Then, let's say they are creating one or more intelligent life forms on that particular planet, and cultures and civilizations arise and fall. They then can, if they so wish, open up portals to literally insert cultures into the planes of the targeted planet. But not only that, when a blueprint of a civilization or culture is made, founders can manifest variations of this blueprint in different realities. In the book, the Pleiadians make up an analogy with capes. It's like when someone makes a blueprint of a cape, it is then manifested in reality in that particular shape and form. But then the creator of these capes notices that there is a demand of variations of that cape, so he or she creates those variations and manifests them, too. So when the Katato creates one culture, variations of that cultures, including variations of its languages, are also inserted and anchored into other realms. The founders seed planets with intelligent life forms for a reason. Each civilization has a certain purpose, which is imprinted in their DNA, a purpose which is often unique for that species. But there is also a bigger, common purpose we, as a created species, have with other races in the multiverse, and that is to grow up, learn about creation, and share our experiences with the cosmos, to make it expand in consciousness and intelligence, and then to become creator gods ourselves, if we so wish. I explained earlier in this chapter that the Katato are often the overseers of the cultures they have created and help in their development, or leave them the tools they need to be able to evolve on their own. However, sometimes, like in the case of humanity, that doesn't happen the way it is supposed to. The Pleiadians were not founders in its true meaning, but some of them were their helpers, who eventually messed up and left their mess behind them. The major reason they are here now, channeling through Barbara Marciniak, is because for themselves to be able to grow any further, they must make sure that all forms of life that they have helped create or maintain and set into motion have as much freedom as they themselves wish to have. They know, and express it well in their book, that the goddess will not take them in before they have done this. So the golden rule, do unto others, very much applies to all beings in the multiverse, as it seems. This also applies very much to humanity as well. It's easy to point fingers at aliens who did this and others who did that, but the problems we're sitting in right now are our problems in the sense that we are the only ones who can solve them. And it doesn't matter if they were created by us in the first place or not.